and welcome to Fabric Bias. It is Sunday, November 26, 2023. If you celebrated Thanksgiving this weekend, I hope you had a great one. If you didn't celebrate this weekend, I still hope you had a great weekend. So this is my third video on this bag that I've made, and so I'm just going to show you a couple more versions of what I did. Nothing really changed, and then I want to just show you some of the things that I'm discovering as I sew the bag. So I just made this one. That one's for my sister. She watches these videos, so she'll know that. That's okay. So what we do every year is we send each other stocking stuffers, and I send a whole bunch of them down to my sister, who then spreads the joy, because my family gets to spend Christmas together. We don't travel at Christmas, so I don't get to go down there. And so what I like to do is, this was my sister's idea, I stole it from her. I make bags to put all the stocking stuffers in, so that when she gets all the stocking stuffers, she just can grab the bag out and hand it over, put it in the pile, because we tend to get really big piles of stuff. So this is actually not as blue as it looks on camera. This is actually turquoise blue, but there it is on that. So just a couple more versions. Nothing really different on that one. What I wanted to show you on this was, because I knew I would be sewing quite a few of these bags, I sew the same bag for everybody. And then I make some for other people as well. And this is my Christmas bag this year. And so I knew I would be making a lot of it. And to make it easier on myself, what I do in my process is, so this is a video that I watched. I said that in a previous video. I saw another creator who did this bag, and I really liked it. So that's why I've covered up here the measurements that I'm using, because those are her measurements, and you should go to her video and give her the views for that. I don't want to steal those views from her. But I kind of make my notes on, because I knew I would be sewing this in a different process than the way that her video showed. I went through, I make my notes on what I'm going to do here. You can see, and I use red if I'm still in the middle of thinking things through when I'm printing, and changes that I want to make. And then as I sew more bags, I make notes on here, and then I change it into my electronic file, so that later when I go back, if I decide to sew this in, I don't know, a year from now, or 6 months from now, or 2 years from now, or whatever, then my notes are still on the computer, and I don't have to worry about the hard copy. On this particular bag, because there are a lot of places you need to cut out, so you cut corners out, and then you have to lay Velcro down. I also made myself a template that I could just lay down on the fabric. And of course, I'm in the United States, so we're printing on 8.5 by 11. So I just kind of made a template that I could kind of finagle around to put on my fabric. And so the way that worked was, I know I'm cutting out 2.5-inch corners, so I made a 2.5-inch box on my 8.5 by 11 piece of paper that I cut out of this corner. And then I knew where I wanted to place my Velcro. And so I made little notches to fit on my fabric at those 2.5-inch corners, and I'll show you that in a second. So I could lay this down and then make a chalk line and mark that. No. Also put, if I'm actually doing my handle placement a little differently here. I put a square where I would put my handle placement if I were sewing the handles on before I sewed the body together. I like sewing the handles on after I sew the body together. You just have to be aware that your stitching is going to show through on both sides. But I like the idea, to me, because the handles take, the bag is a part where the handles attached takes a lot of stress. I want it through more layers of fabric, so I wait and sew it on afterwards, and I just try to be really careful when I'm stitching. Not always successful, but I do try. And then I make different notes to myself, like, hey, these cutouts don't match anything on that. So anyway, let me show you what I did, how this works. So this is my inside, my next one that I'm sewing, my inside body piece. I know I need 2.5-inch corners cut out of here, so I take my 2.5-inch piece and I line it up, the paper. I line up the top of the edge of the paper with the top edge of the fabric in here, and then I just make a chalk line in the corner. And I do that on all of my chalk lines, all of my corners. Although you don't have to, because you can cut these out together if you're careful when you fold it. But I can do that here. I can do that here, and this is the open end. And then on the bottom, I know I'm not going to be cutting this piece out, but I do need to know where that 2.5-inch mark is. So I still I'll line it up here and along the side, and then I just make a mark here, because that's what I'm going to see in my seam when I sew. And I do that on both sides. Over here, same thing, line it up, and I mark it here. And then I don't have to get out my ruler, measure it, measure it. And I'm going to do that on both sides here, because I do need this. I actually do need to mark here and here on that one. So that's just faster to me than getting out my ruler, figuring out where my 2.5 inches, what do I need this mark to be, and just helps out. On the lining, I'm going to be sewing the Velcro in before I sew the body pieces together. So I also have, once I have these corners cut out, it's easier to see. But I can take this portion now and line it up with where my edge would be. And I'll show you on the outside piece. The Velcro goes on the inside piece, but I actually have the corners cut out on this, so you can see it a little bit easier. So I can line it up with the edge here, and then I can draw a chalk line here, and I know that my Velcro would go here. This, of course, is the exterior, so the Velcro is not going to go here, but same thing here. I've already done it here. So I've lined up this little notch out with my 2.5 inch where I know that's going to come out, that corner is going to come out. And I've marked a chalk line here for a 1.5 inch chalk line, because for the hook and loop tape, Velcro hook and loop tape, on each side. And so when I go to place my hook and loop tape, I've already got it marked. And I do that on, of course, both sides, because they need to be on both sides on that. So move that up so you can see that a little bit better. I used a blue chalk. Oh, it might be easier on this side. I think this side's clear. There we go. So there's my 2.5 inch cutout. The long line here is where I'm going to be cutting out my 2.5 inch corners. And then this is where my Velcro is going to go in relation to that on that side. So just made myself this, and that way it just goes a lot faster. Since I'm putting my handles on after the I sew, I don't need the markings for that, because what I do is I just take my handle and I line it up against the edge of my cutout here and the bottom, and I just sew it on with that lined up. So I already have a natural marking for it, so I don't need to mark it on that. So that is one of the things that I do to speed things up for myself when I know I'm going to be making a bunch of bags. And this will help me too in the future when I haven't sewn them after in a while, and I have to come back and I've decided I want to sew it again. Then this will kind of help me remember what I did. On some of the other things that I'm doing, so I am putting the pockets on the inside and the outside. I've already sewn this one on, and what I've done, was I like having little tabs on the bag, and on this bag, because when you sew it, the side seam is in the center. I don't want my tab way over here, because that's getting tucked in anyway. I want my tab to be more on the front here. So what I've done is sewn the tab into my pocket fabric before I sewed the pocket together, and that way it hides my raw edges for that. So, and that's essentially put your interfacing on, go right sides together, tuck the tab inside, sew around, leaving a turning gap, flip it right side out, press it, and then that tab's going to stick right out on the side. And you can choose if you want it hanging off. On this one, I decided I wanted it hanging to the right. This one, I decided I wanted it hanging to the left on the inside. So it doesn't matter. I still have to stitch across here. I haven't done that yet. Oh, I better do that tonight before I go to sleep, or I'm going to forget. So that's something I've done. On the straps, because the straps are exposed, unlike the tabs, the ends of the tabs won't be exposed because they're in the fabric. No exposed raw edges. The straps are going to go on top. So they lay on top. So you will see the raw edge here. So in order to keep from having a raw edge on that one, when I make my strap, so it's that fold and fold method. So you take your 4-inch piece of fabric, or 4 times whatever width you want, and then you fold it in half. Oh, I know you've seen this a lot of times, but I'm going to do it anyways. You fold it in half, press it, open it back up, fold the raw edges into the center, into that center press line. There you go. And then you fold it back in half again, and there you go. There's your strap. And then you sew up each side. Well, before you sew up each side, in order to keep from having these raw edges that you have to roll under and then add bulk to, what you do is you take it after you've folded it, in half, folded your raw edges in, and then fold it again, you turn it back out the opposite way, like that. So you've got it exposed. So this is how it would be done. Everything's covered up. You take it and you open it up, fold it back on itself. So now you have your raw edges here. And then you're going to stitch across here on both ends. And once you've done that, there it is, stitched across. You just roll it back under and stuff it back in there. And now you have a covered end. You have a nice finished end there. And then you can go and stitch down each side to finish it off. And your straps don't have an exposed edge. Kind of hard to see. I chose black to sew on these, but no exposed edge. There. So that's how I'm doing that. And there it is. Still haven't figured out how to make any edit YouTube videos, so that's eventually this is the bag I'd like to make on and show how the changes that I've made in the sewing techniques. But I'll get there someday. There it is. There it is. There are my notes. And that's it for now. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that wherever and whenever you're at, you're having a great time. Thanks for watching.